hand to hand. Conversations ran from the deeply personal to the urgently political. Coming out stories, custody battles, workplace discrimination, police violence. The bar wasn't just where you drank, it was where you organized. In the United Kingdom, the story differed in detail, but matched in emotional shape. London's lesbian bar world centered partly around Soho and partly scattered through neighborhoods where queer communities had established themselves. The Gateways Club in Chelsea is perhaps the most famous. It opened in the late 1930s and ran until 1985, nearly 50 years. Tucked below street level on the King's Road, the stair felt like crossing into another world. The Gateways was managed by Gina and her partner Smitty, who ran the bar with warmth and firmness. They knew their regulars by name and remembered who was going through a breakup or who had just fallen in love. They were the keepers of the community's life. In 1968, the Gateways achieved unexpected fame as a filming location for the movie The Killing of Sister George. The film's portrayal of lesbian life is problematic, but the footage of the Gateways is extraordinary. Many women visible in those scenes were real regulars, not actors. They had no idea they were making history. They were just out. While the internet was slowly redirecting new community members away from bars, the city itself was eating the bars alive from the outside. Gentrification is one of those words that gets used so broadly it can lose its meaning. So let's be specific about what it meant for lesbian bars. Many lesbian bars had been built in neglected, affordable, overlooked parts of cities where developers and governments had not yet cared. That neglect was paradoxically what had made them possible. Low rents, flexible landlords, and spaces where something unconventional could take root. Starting in the 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s and 2010s, those neighborhoods changed as the cool, the young, and the moneyed arrived. Rents rose, and landlords who had ignored tenants for decades suddenly discovered the building was worth much more. Developers moved in, and old buildings were torn down or converted into higher-end properties. The bars, which had always operated on thin margins, could not keep up with the rent increases, and one by one they fell. In many cases, the communities that had made those neighborhoods desirable were the ones priced out when the area became fashionable. It is a particular kind of cruelty to be evicted from something you built. There is also the most complicated force of all, the genuine expansion of rights and acceptance the community had fought for. As same-sex relationships became more accepted legally and socially, lesbian women gained access to more of mainstream social life. They could be open at work and bring their partners to family events without the same level of risk. When the bar had been the only safe place, it was irreplaceable because there was nowhere else. As mainstream spaces opened up even partially, the bar lost some of its unique necessity, and attendance thinned. None of this is to suggest the progress was not real or not worth fighting for, because of course it was. But real progress can also come with invisible losses, and one of those losses was that the community stopped having the same urgent need to build its own world. Over the last 2 decades, conversations around gender identity became more prominent and complex within LGBTQ communities. The question of what lesbian bar actually means and who it is for has become less straightforward than it once appeared. Some spaces expanded their identity to include all queer people, and some regulars felt that diluted what made the space specifically theirs. Others held more rigid boundaries that made some people feel excluded in the opposite direction. There is no clean narrative here, and the conversation is real, ongoing, and In the early 1980s, something happened that would reshape every aspect of gay and lesbian life, including its bars. It began as rumors, then as news reports, then as a drumbeat of fear that grew louder with every month. AIDS. The epidemic arrived in the gay community like a catastrophe that the rest of the world, initially, had decided it could afford to ignore. The Reagan administration in the United States did not publicly acknowledge the epidemic for years. Funding for research was minimal. The mainstream press treated it as a problem belonging to people they had already decided didn't matter. And in that silence, people died, thousands of them, and then tens of thousands. The gay male community was hit with devastating, shattering force. Whole friendship networks erased, whole creative communities destroyed within a few years, and the lesbian community, facing a crisis that was not primarily killing them, made a decision. They showed up. This is a part of the story that doesn't get told nearly enough. At a moment when much of mainstream society had decided to let gay men die, lesbian women chose solidarity over distance. They organized care networks. They drove people to hospital appointments. They sat with the dying when families wouldn't come. They raised money, ran organizations, fought in courtrooms and legislatures for research funding and patients' rights. They marched under the banner of ACTUP when ACTUP needed warm bodies and fierce voices. And they did this while also continuing to run their bars. Their bars became meeting places for activist organizing. Their bars became fundraising venues. Their bars became places where a community could grieve together as well as celebrate. The AIDS crisis did not primarily kill lesbians, but it demanded everything from them. And they gave it. The community that emerged from the 1980s was, in many ways, more unified than it had entered them. Forged by shared grief and shared rage and the particular bond that comes from choosing to stand beside someone in the worst thing they'll ever go through. And then, slowly, something that looked on the surface like progress began to hollow the bars out from the inside. This is the most complicated part of this story, because the forces that destroyed most lesbian bars were not, in the main, hatred and violence and police raids. The forces that destroyed most lesbian bars looked, from a distance, like freedom. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the internet changed how communities found themselves. Before the internet, if you were a young woman who had just figured out that she was gay and wanted to find other women like herself, your options were limited and risky. You had to go somewhere physical. You had to take the risk of being seen going there. You had to push open that bar door and walk in alone and hope it was what you needed. The internet made that process both easier and, eventually, less necessary. Chat rooms first, then forums, then social networks, then dating apps. Suddenly, the discovery process that had once required physical courage could happen from a bedroom, in private, with no one watching. This was, genuinely, a gift for many women. Young women in small towns who had no bar within 100 miles found connection online. Women who were housebound or disabled could access communities for the first time. Women in countries where going to a bar could mean arrest, or worse, found a lifeline. For all of them, the internet opened a world that had previously been unreachable. But for the bars, it began a slow bleeding away of the one resource they couldn't survive without: new people finding them. The women who had discovered themselves in bars kept coming, but the generation behind them had a different path in. And for many of them, that path didn't include a bar at all. A computer screen in a dark room, the glow of early internet chat, cut to an empty bar stool, cut to a phone screen showing a... And now let's talk about the places that refuse to close. Because here's the other side of this story. After everything, there are still lesbian bars. Not many, but they exist. And the women running them know exactly what they're carrying. Henrietta Hudson has been operating in Greenwich Village since 1991. In New York City real estate terms, in queer bar terms, that is an astonishing run. It has survived multiple economic crises, rent increases, neighborhood transformation, and waves of cultural change over 3 decades. It has outlasted bars that seemed far more financially secure. It has buried some of its oldest regulars and watched their daughters show up at the bar years later. The women who run it talk about it with the particular mix of exhaustion and determination that characterizes anyone who has maintained something essential for a long time. They know what the bar is and what it does. They know that when a young woman comes through the door for the first time, what she finds there might genuinely change the course of her life. That knowledge is not a small thing to carry. In Seattle, the Wild Rose has been operating since 1984, making it one of the longest continuously operating lesbian bars in the United States. 40+ years through everything. The Wildrose sits in a neighborhood that has itself undergone gentrification pressures, and the area around it has changed dramatically. But the bar has not closed. When the pandemic hit in 2020, the Wildrose launched a fundraising campaign to survive the forced closure. The response from their community across the country was extraordinary. People who had graduated from the bar to full, open lives decades earlier donated, feeling like they were repaying a debt, which is exactly what they were doing. Paris has long had a complex relationship with its lesbian spaces, and Guy Moulin has survived since the 1970s. The city that projects romantic freedom has not always been as welcoming to its queer women as its mythology suggests, but there have always been spaces where women found each other. The Marais has housed lesbian-owned and lesbian-frequented bars, whose populations have shifted and sometimes disappeared as neighborhoods transform. What is consistent is the same story. Women who needed somewhere to go found each other, built something, and fought to maintain it. These surviving bars glow at night, signs visible, evidence of life inside.
In the last few years, the scale of the loss became undeniable, and people who had never thought much about lesbian bars felt that something was wrong. People began to fight back, not with nostalgia, but with organization, money, and a clear sense of what was at stake. A 2021 documentary called The Last Lesbian Bars brought the conversation to a national audience in the United States. It profiled 5 remaining lesbian bars and the women running them, showing the financial pressure and what the community stood to lose. The response was immediate and significant, with donations pouring into the featured bars. Other bars reported increased support and attendance, as communities suddenly remembered why they existed. At the same time, the Lesbian Bar Project launched to preserve and support remaining lesbian bars. The campaign raised awareness of the cultural importance of these spaces and connected supporters to resources. Some communities decided that waiting was not enough and that they needed to build new spaces. In several American cities in London and in a handful of European capitals, new lesbian bars or lesbian-focused nights have opened. These new spaces are often smaller, more intentionally political and explicitly intersectional in who they are. They are run by a generation that grew up with the internet and who have thought hard about why physical space still matters. They are building the next chapter of something old. You might be wondering in 2020, with dating apps, social media, and greater acceptance, does any of this still matter? Let me give you the case for necessary. An app gives you a screen, but a bar gives you a room. An app lets you present a curated version of yourself, while a bar puts you in a room with fully human, complicated women. An app lets you swipe, but a bar lets you dance. More than access to other gay women, a bar gives you a physical community with warmth, frustration, belonging, and weight. There are still women who will be invisible in public when a woman is a gay choice, and entire countries where these bars could not legally exist. There are women in Western cities who will not come out, who need a room where they can exist without translating themselves. For all of those women, an app is not enough. A screen is not enough. And a profile is not a hand on your shoulder in the dark. A community without physical space is a community that can be disappeared, blocking people out from or simply if all gathering happens online, and history lives nowhere visible, elders and newcomers live on it. A bar is a place where past and present share the same walls, where history is built into the furniture and time accumulates. A bar is memory made physical, Marie.
Before we end, I want to take a moment for the ones that didn't make it. For Mods in San Francisco, which closed in 1989 after 23 years, whose regulars cried openly on the last night and still talk about it decades later as though a friend died. For the Sahara Club, for Girl Spot, for Meow Mix in New York, which ran through the 1990s and hosted some of the most important musicians of that era, where Ani DiFranco played early shows, where the energy was electric and urgent and felt to everyone in the room like something that would last forever. For bars in small cities that never made it into documentaries or history books, the ones in mid-sized American cities, in provincial British towns, in cities you've never visited that existed for 20 years or 30 years or just 3. They were everything to the women who found them, and they disappeared, leaving nothing behind except the memories of the women who were there. For every first night, for every last night, for every ordinary Tuesday in between, for all the women who pushed a door open for the first time and found out in the 30 seconds it took their eyes to adjust to the light that they were not alone. Here is what I want you to take from this story. Not grief, though this story deserves some. Not nostalgia, though the things we've lost are worth mourning. What I want you to take is this: everything you have was built by someone. Some woman somewhere decided that the thing her community needed didn't exist yet, and so she was going to build it, with no guarantee it would work, with no safety net, with the knowledge that the world might try to destroy it. She built it anyway. Every bar in this story was built by someone who decided that the gap in the world was unacceptable, who looked at a community with nowhere to go and said not anymore. The bars that remain are still being run by women who carry that same stubborn, defiant conviction. And the new bars being built right now are being built by the latest generation of the same kind of woman. The one who looks at a world that still tells her she doesn't fully belong and decides to build the room herself. That room might be a bar. It might be a community center or a reading group or a sports team or a podcast or a YouTube channel, but the impulse is the same. This should exist, so I'm going to build it. It always started with someone deciding that. It still does. If a lesbian bar saved your life, or changed it even in a small way, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. Those stories deserve to be told, and this community deserves to hear them. And if you want to support the bars that are still fighting to stay open, the Lesbian Bar Project is a real organization doing real work. Next episode, we are going somewhere that will make your jaw drop. Stonewall 1969, the night that cracked history open, and the role the women played in it that every mainstream retelling somehow manages to almost completely erase. Subscribe so you don't miss it.